But that's Dr. Kayode Fayemi, who is the chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum, reading out the agenda of the forum under his leadership. We're still talking about the roles and responsibility of the police and army, especially in the light of security challenges the country is currently going through. And I have with me in the studio two gentlemen. Dr. Yakubu Joseph is a peace and security researcher. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much.
I also have with me Professor Stefano Zabadi, who is a Provost Center for Strategic Research and Studies at the National Defense College. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily, sir.
Okay. I'm not at National Defense College.
Not anymore?
Not anymore. I'm in Bingham University.
Oh, my apologies
Professor
for that.
there, yeah.
My apologies for that. Well, just, gentlemen, you have heard, I mean, I don't know if Professor Zabadi caught the complaint. There's no other word to tag it now of Mr. Fatai Owoshini, former CP Lagos and Benue. But then there's a question on the table as to whether is it in the nature of the security challenges that we're facing? Because I have been thinking that in recent times, I mean, we know that the military is empowered to tackle territorial integrity issues. But we all know, especially if you have been looking at security challenges around the world, that apart from major countries where you hear between Iran and US, major developing countries, the security challenges have now been of an internal nature. Do you think that the military would have had to evolve anyway from its own primary responsibility, not to take over what the police is doing, but in addition to what it was initially meant to do? I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts, Dr. Yakubu?
Yeah, absolutely. Traditionally, the military, is meant to take care of external aggression and to protect the territorial integrity of the state. But if you look at the nature of the insecurity that we are facing, and many countries of the world are facing today, we're not. If you look at the statistics, the data that is there, the interstate conflicts have gone down. So most of what we're dealing with are interstate conflicts. And so the military itself has to adjust and to deal with this kind of issues that arise. And I think what has happened in the last few years is that the military is coming to grips with what is the development we are seeing, the internal crisis, the insecurity that it's happening in this country. And therefore, they are trying to master the game. We talk about fourth generation warfare. We talk about clandestine groups, groups that use unconventional means to destabilize the state. The military is trained in conventional combat, but the kind of combat they have to deal with today, for example, dealing with Boko Haram, this is not the traditional conventional approach to warfare. But today, the military has to take that on. And therefore, I think they're doing and they're learning, and that's what we're seeing. So I think that it is impossible to say that the role of the military is cast on a stone and has to stay there forever. That definitely it has to evolve. And we have seen a great deal of that in this country.
I think the major complaint right now is that has now been done to the detriment of the agency primarily saddled with that responsibility, which is the police. You will see that now the police, even though the police is supposed to lead internal conflict situation, internal conflict operations, they seem now to be taking, we seem to call on the military more and more, or the DSS, or all these other agencies, than we do the Nigeria police. Is that what has happened in your own reckoning?
Well, see, the Constitution, I think Section 217, provides that the military deals with external aggression, territorial protection and defense, but also provides that it can give aid to civil authority when required. There are procedures for that to happen, which means that internal security is the purview of the police. And this is what we see all over. Some countries can decide to have National Guard and so on. Our neighbors have the Gendarmerie National that is trained like the military, but it's not the military, and they deal with such issues. But they deal
in other words, they're not the military, but they're not the police either.
No, but they deal with police duties as well.
I see.
Gendarmerie, yeah. So those are arrangements that have been put in place, even by our neighbors. In our own case, what we have done is to, and when I say we, I'm talking about political leadership, because they ought to have put in place arrangements for the police to be in a position to do their job. The military will come in when the police are overwhelmed. Now, we have gone about this Boko Haram problem for about 10 years now. Now, 10 years is good time to have learned and to have put in, either to rejig your systems or put in place new systems and new plan to address this issue. As time has gone on, the police has been largely, in my view, absent from the scene. It has been a military war against the Boko Haram. And we go back and forth. I think recently, for instance, the Borno State governor, the new one, came here to meet Mr. President and to say, look, go soft on the military approach. We want to use the JT. And you see, we have, the signals are such that they leave, I think, the citizens confused. Will this thing ever end? Who is going to bail us out? And that creates, in my mind, a huge credibility crisis for the institutions that are doing their best, perhaps, to end this problem. So it's not just simply a matter of who is to do what. The military, as we speak, are deployed in most of the states of the Federation.
Very
and
true.
internal duties. That is not, you see, external threats have not disappeared. So if we're busy and the military is stretched, you know, the army is overstretched. You want them here, you want them there. They can be all over the place.
Yeah, I was trying to clarify with you whether, when you talked about the gendarmes in Cameroon, for instance, or the National Guard, I think there's a National Guard in the US, for instance, they are separate, excuse me, they are separate from the police and they are separate from the military. Yeah. Is that right?
Yes.
Are you suggesting that we have another body that looks after those, will I say, high-end security challenges that are not exactly civil operations? For instance, with terrorism now, it's a little higher than, say, kidnapping or armed robbery. That's something that is supposed to be within the purview of the police. But it's not as high as, say, external aggression from a neighbor. Is that what you're suggesting?
What I'm suggesting is that we look at this architecture we have had all along. Don't forget that there was an attempt some time past to have a National Guard, but politically it didn't seem to fly. And I think that it was in the bid perhaps to take care of things like this. And we have not upgraded, if I will use that word, the mobile police force to a National Guard.
So the mobile police force could have served that?
Well, it depends on also the training that you give them. Recently, I think there was an attempt to train them by the army, and it ended with a lot of dismissals and so on, because the mobile police didn't want to be trained like that. So we have a lot of issues to sort out, you know. It appears as if we confront an issue and we don't have a systematic, a holistic view of things, and to now decide deliberately what to put where, when, and how to do that, so that there are many agencies. We need to have synergy in this, not people playing their own game on their own turf, almost totally unrelated to the others. I mean, it's a lot of things that could have been avoided if the security forces and the military and all that were working in synergy, you know, and I'm sure the population will see the effect of such a wonderful synergy between them. So those are issues that need to be dealt with quickly, in my view.
Well, synergy is one. Capacity is definitely another. You listened there to Mr. Woshini, and you couldn't help but say it was a litany of we had. Or we had a mechanic workshop, we had vehicles, we had uniforms. And now, you know, he's talking about restoring the dignity of the average policeman. It will be difficult to judge really what the police are capable of or what they really can do if we have not done the most by the police. What are your thoughts on that, especially now that we're beginning to look at creating state policing? It is because we think largely that the National Police Force has failed.
Yes, I think that the point the former commissioner was making are valid, that there is, the police is under-resourced, and also he's talking about the attitude of the public towards the police, like people like to circumvent rather than to comply with even simple traffic rules. But I think it goes beyond that. We have to look at the complexity of the new security challenges that we have in this country. And the security forces, you know, do not have a handle on this. These are entirely new phenomena. And therefore, they have to really study it. Like Prof said, you know, they're on a learning curve. You know, they have to see, how do you deal with issue of terrorism? How do you deal with issue of banditry, of kidnapping? It's not about numbers. It's about a different kind of capacity. That is sophistication of policing, issue of surveillance equipment, issue of intelligence gathering, issue of community policing in a very different way, where you engage with the communities in order to fish out and map the activities of these criminals that are ravaging the communities. So I think by and large, we have to appreciate, as part of our appraisal of the performance of the security forces, that they are dealing with something that is new, something that is evolving, and they're trying to catch up with that. And I had,
which threats precisely? Kidnapping is not exactly new. Armed robbery is still there. It's not exactly new. Banditry, yes, to an extent, but if we had protection in the first place, people won't just come and, you know, attack communities and get away with it.
Well, okay, let me give you an example with kidnapping. I didn't have to worry about kidnapping in the past because it was targeted at certain people. For example, people in the Niger Delta working in oil industries, you know, the elite who have the cash to give. But today, nearly everybody is at risk of being kidnapped. So this is a new trend, and has become also more widespread.
But it has become more widespread. Some people argue that it's become more widespread because of a lack of capacity to even tackle when it first of all started. If the police or security agencies had shown capacity, it is when people now know that we can commit this and get away with it that, you know, it now began to gain currency. You don't agree?
You're right. Actually, we don't have the capacity still, but you're building the capacity as you try to tackle the problem. This is what has to happen, because as it becomes widespread, you need more resources. As it assumes other dimensions, for example, you look at the socioeconomic classes that are targeted. Today, everybody is being targeted. And, you know, just from here to Kaduna, for example, traveling by road, and for most people, I mean, it's an impossible thing. It's a nightmare. Now, this is unimaginable. You will think that the Kaduna-Abuja highway is the most protected in Nigeria because it is sandwiched between the Federal Capital Territory and this state that has the most in terms of military installations. Yet, you know, it has become the most dangerous road. Now, today, people, thanks for the train that has provided an alternative. But today, I think what we have to appreciate is that, yes, the police are under-resourced. Yes, the issue of capacity is still a big one. The phenomena we are dealing with is quite new. It's changing. So when you talk about giving ransom, for example, in the past, you know, you have to mobilize sacks of money to give. Today, they take even a couple of thousands. You know, today, our traditional rulers in Zamfara, this has happened. You have also what I will say complex, security challenges. In a banditry, you still have kidnapping taking place. So this is also very new. You are dealing with insurgency, for example. You have a different kind of kidnapping. Mass abduction of people, especially targeting young girls or women, and an assault on girls' child education.
Which some people again will say it points to a lack of capacity. Sorry, I keep interrupting you because when these things happen, recall that when the Chibok girls were kidnapped, the first question that a number of people asked is, how could so many girls be taken in one fell swoop without any trace, without any security agency being aware or trying to stop them or having the capacity to stop them, and they vanished into thin air till as we speak, we still don't know whether, where they are. Maybe the government knows, maybe there's a fear in trying to get them out. We don't know. But the questions as to how could so many people be taken at once and in a place where we have government? Those are the questions that people are asking. But, sir, we could talk about the problems from now to next year. From what you're saying, you talk about this on a daily basis with your students. What are the solutions that you think we should be providing as we speak?
Well, I mean, the solutions speak to the problems. Institutions don't seem to function, at least as they should in this country. The problem of capacity can be seen in institutional failure, can be seen in also leadership failure. And then you go into other areas like the equipment, like the personnel, and so on. Now, how you solve this? Don't forget that security challenges have arisen because of failure of governance. The people do not feel government. And increasingly, they are disconnected from government. And they're seeking their own ways of survival. That's why the informal sector, whether it's in the economy, whether it's in the judiciary, or what have you, is large. People would rather go to some whatever contraptions and seek justice and so on, than to go to the cause. The state is not reaching the people in terms of governance. And that is why that's the underlying cause of all these security problems. Then we have institutions, including institutions of government, that are also not working.
So how would you suggest then that the government begins to get down to the level of the grassroots?
Well, again, when I talk about institutional failures, political parties, for example, are supposed to help in mobilizing people to participate in government and so on, so that connection can be there. And whenever people are required to perform whatever duties, they will do so, because as citizens you have rights, you also have responsibilities. But political parties do not exist in the strict sense of it. So when you put government at the local level, local government is not there. State government, I'm sorry, we feel them more in the news and all that. And then when I talk about failure of institutions, you see, we are a country where everything depends on the individual. This is not right. You have institutions, they have systems and processes. They are in a position, they also have institutional memory, and they are able to look ahead. These things we are saying now should have been foreseen. When you have research, you are keeping data, you are in a position to anticipate and to also quickly deal with the issues. Training is another. All these things are suffering across these institutions, security institutions included. So how would we not be performing badly like this when we neglect simple steps that were put there and are expected to serve us? The countries we admire do these things. Now, so they're not complex. They are simple, they can be solved, but you need the political will to do so. We are supposed to be running a merit-based system. Appoint the right persons to the right positions, no matter how high the structure of command, from the top to the low. Now, recently there was this statement greeted to the army chief that he was disappointed with the people in the field and not, if they are well led, that shouldn't happen. And if they are well provided for, that also shouldn't happen. And it takes a lot of things. There are many moving parts that need to be, to aggregate together to produce the kind of results that we want. So here we are. Check the recruitment. Are they the right people? Are they trained? And so on. If you check, you will be horrified to see, well, perhaps the military is a bit better. But maybe until recently, I don't think the police used to train as well as they should. So these are the things. People cannot go out there and do what they don't know because they were not properly prepared to perform those roles. So that's where we are. And then so now whenever an incident takes place, you can predict what will happen. There will be a statement, this will never happen, we'll fish out this, the next one will happen. It's same. So we are, like I said, we are very confused. We do not know which way to turn.
Well, we'll be getting the thoughts of Dr. Yakubu when we come back. It's a very worrying situation, especially, when you say it is so predictable what we say after a crisis has occurred. But I think what people need to see right now is more action and feel more government. In just a moment, please stay with us. It's our closing moment now with Dr. Yakubu Joseph and Professor Estefano Zabadi. And we're talking about the roles and responsibilities of the police and army, especially in the current security, with the current security challenges that we're facing as a country. Dr. Joseph, your thoughts on, what we should be doing, where we are and what we should be doing?
Yeah. If you look at the insecurity that we're facing today, I think we have to focus on two things. We have to restore civil order, especially in places that we've seen some kind of civil disturbances, like Zamfara. We have the Northeast, for example. At the same time, we have to pursue issues of social justice. The two have to go hand in hand. You cannot separate the issue. You cannot just go kill your way out of these security problems. You must deal with the social justice issues. You must look at really that the environmental problems that are pushing a lot of people out, losing their livelihoods, and resorting to crime. That I would say that I'm very happy with the Office of the National Security Advisor, who has come out categorically to show that they have a very good grasp of the underlying causes of the insecurity. And I think the federal government is beginning to understand. I'm not holding brief for the government, but I think they are beginning to understand, even the Nigerian Governors Forum, talking about establishing a security committee at the National Economic Council. That is a shift, a paradigm shift, I would say, because they are viewing the human security angle and not just looking at the issue of civil disturbances, threats that, threats to life and property. So I think that we have to see that policing becomes more sophisticated. We have to see that if you are employed to do a job and you have taken oath to do it, you must do it right. And people ought to be held accountable if they fail to perform their duty. The problem is that a lot of things happen. If a person makes a mistake, for example, a commissioner of police or the IG or anybody makes a mistake, and that leads to loss of life, like we had in Benue State. Even where a blame is placed, for example, on somebody for not averting, the escalation we had seen, nothing is done really to make sure that that person is held accountable for what they ought to have done that they didn't do. Now, I think also that synergy among the services is very important with the police. I think that also they are doing quite a lot. Operational and tactical issues are not going to be disclosed. We want to see results, and that's why we are complaining. But of course, I know they're on top of the game. they cannot disclose. There are certain things that those of us who are studying security cannot be talking about, you know, in terms of what they try to do. But definitely, I think Nigerians want to see rapid response. And you know, the mobile police was meant to be a rapid response unit, an anti-riot unit that can be deployed, you know. And today, you know, information flies very fast. How long does it take to communicate if something is unfolding? How long does it take to deploy, you know, a unit to a troubled spot in order to quell any kind of uprising? Or even how long does it take to... Sorry, yes, go ahead.
So many questions to ask, and definitely, I believe that, you know, these recommendations, if they're looked into, certainly we should be making progress. You've talked about, Professor, you talked about, you know, coming down into ungoverned spaces as well, and, you know, bringing democracy down to the grassroots, getting people involved in governance. Well, we have to thank you, gentlemen, for your thoughts this morning. We've been speaking with Dr. Yakubu Joseph, who is a peace and security researcher. Thank you for coming, Doctor.
Very much.
And we also have been speaking with Professor Estefano Zabadi, who is the Dean Postgraduate Studies at Bingham University. Thank you for your thoughts this morning, Professor. Well, that's it for this segment. We're now looking at another segment now, and it's over to Chamberlain in Lagos.